What do you enjoy most about your work now as a consultant? You left your previous
Yeah.
multiple CEO positions. How different is it now, and what do you like about it?
Well, I like and that like a lot of things about it. One of them is the fact the variety of things that I get involved in doing. So it could be governance, it could be review of a particular program or service. It could be some giving some advice on structure. There's a whole series of different things it could be. I think the other thing that I like is if I don't want to do it, I can say no. When I was in full-time jobs,
Mhm.
you really don't have a lot of flexibility about saying, I actually don't think I want to do that one.
And did you always know you wanted to go into consulting? I know you worked with KPMG for a little bit, so you did consulting with them, but did you know that you wanted to do independent consulting?
No, no, I mean, I'm not actually, I've said to people, I'm not a good example of somebody who's planned their career. For me, it's been serendipity. And when people ask me for advice on career planning, I said, well, I often say, don't look at me as an example of planning a career well, because I took advantage of things that came along and, uh, you know, uh, tried to say, okay, well, maybe I can learn from this. I mean, there are two big things that motivate me. One is I have to feel I'm learning. That's important to me. And the other is that I have to feel I'm making a contribution. So I always rate, everything that I look at. Those are the two important lenses I put on it. And so it's kind of left me, with a lot of flexibility. So I would never have thought I would have been a consultant. In fact, when I went into nursing, I don't think I ever thought that I would do anything other than bedside nursing.
Ah, so what drew you to nursing initially?
Oh, I think it was when I was in school in Toronto. The school I went to, Branksome Hall, in the summer they encouraged the students to do volunteer work. And for 2 summers, it would have been my, I think, 16th and 17th years, I did volunteer work at Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto. And that was a real eye opener for me. I was doing a lot of work with patients, visiting them on the units, taking them down for their clinical services that they would be getting. And it really, it became quite interesting to me. And I would say that that was the big motivator, to be honest.
So you did bedside nursing for a while, and then how did you know you now had to go into management?
Well, I didn't do bedside nursing for very long. When I was in training in my last year, I got a scholarship, which allowed me to go and do a post-basic degree in nursing education. So while I worked during the summers while I was at university, the requirement was to come back and teach. And so I spent a little bit of time when I graduated from university doing work in the emergency department, the operating room. But then I moved into teaching. So while it was bedside nursing overseeing students, not doing a lot of it myself. And then some interesting jobs came up that I got interested in, and they were still nursing, but they were not bedside nursing. It was nursing education, nursing administration. I went into those and found I quite enjoyed it, and then really started to look more aggressively about, well, what does it mean if I'm going to be in something like this? What do I need? And it was actually, again, when I talk about the importance of relationships, it was when I was working for the Canadian Red Cross, one of the volunteer nurses on one of my national committees gave me some advice. And she said, Janet, if you really want to focus on career in healthcare and in management, she said, you need to go back to university and do a graduate degree. And so I thought about that long and hard. And then I made the decision to go to university to get a graduate degree. And I deliberately made the decision not to do the graduate degree in nursing, because I didn't want to be a clinical specialist in nursing. And then I just picked, in the country at the time I went, I was really interested in research methods and statistics, and maybe at some point doing a doctorate. And at that point, the best program in the country, in fact, one of the best in North America, was the University of Alberta. So I left Toronto and moved out to Edmonton and did my graduate work there.
Would you say you're a risk taker? Like you're open to opportunities and new things?
I think I am. I am a risk taker. Not, you know, I would say not without giving some thought to what the downsides might be of taking some risk. But I think if you're gonna make a contribution, if you're gonna find out what the possibilities are, you have to be willing to take some risks.
So, right, yeah, calculated risks, as they say.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you were climbing up in your career, did you know when you started in management that you wanted to get up to the CEO level?
No, I didn't. You know, I was a manager when I graduated from university. With my graduate degree, I went to the government as a policy analyst, you know, to look at manpower planning and strategy. And then it was, you know, through a variety of positions that was in the government of Alberta. I was there at an extremely good time in Alberta. Peter Lougheed was the premier. There was all kinds of things coming up in the province. And so I did things in finance, I did things in capital construction, a whole variety of different things within the ministry. I took advantage of all the different opportunities there were. And then the deputy minister actually referred me to the University Hospital in Edmonton and said to the CEO, you know, if you're looking for somebody who's a really good planner, you ought to be talking to her. And so he came after me, and then I made my move out of the government to go to the University Hospital, and in an executive position. I went as VP planning. You know, then it was easier to see that at some point I could be a CEO. But to be honest, I hadn't really given it a lot of thought about being a CEO until I got recruited back to Toronto to be the COO of the then Toronto East General Hospital. And since that had been the hospital that I trained at as a nurse, there was a certain incentive to going back there. And, you know, I think I was there about 6 months and became the CEO. And then you could see, you know, it wasn't as mystifying as it is when you're, you know, in a not a direct line to the CEO.
Right. And at that time, when you held such powerful leadership positions, I'm assuming it was predominantly male dominant at the time?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. In fact, my first CEO job, it was East General. There was a number of women. We would get together, the women's CEO group, very small number of us, but we'd get together about every quarter, go to some restaurant down in downtown Toronto, and just talk about our, you know, our experiences. But I don't think there was any doubt that it was male dominated at that level.
And did you face any challenges being a woman in a powerful position?
You know, people have asked me that quite a few times. I can honestly say that's never been an issue for me. Now, I would, with respect to pay, yes, that would be. And you know, I've observed over the years that there are some differences in pay levels. But I can honestly say, people would say, well, it has to be a man to be this or something like that. No, I've been lucky. And when I think of how many provinces I've worked in, I feel comfortable in saying it certainly wasn't pervasive for me anyway. It's much more complex now. I think the job of a CEO, with the exception of Ontario, as you know, the rest of the country is regionalized. And these are big CEO jobs. I mean, in Ontario, they're hospital jobs, or there could be LIN jobs or something like this, but they're relatively small. I mean, that's not to say it would be $1 billion budget, but when I was in Alberta Health Services, you know, was $13 billion, hundreds of thousands of employees. It was different. I think the other big thing I would say is the amount of the reporting and the complexities of understanding, excuse me, what funding is all about, how you manage through that, the requirements of government for performance information, things like that. So it's a much more complex environment. It's also, I mean, the advances in healthcare are huge. It's, to some extent, it's become very businesslike too, which I'm not convinced is necessarily the way to go. I mean, I think you have to, as I've said, you have to use business principles. I think there's no doubt about it. But this is still a human interaction. I think that we can sometimes get lost in the, you get the spreadsheets and the reporting and the numbers and say, yeah, but behind all of that is people. And if we lose sight of that, I think we'd be in real difficulties.